enterprise architecture is a crucial factor in determining the impact of an organizational strategy and then translating it into its implementation. So it's an absolute myth that EA is only for large organizations, a rigid profession, and that the frameworks are too prescriptive. That's also not true. It all boils down to a matter of interpretation and interpreting what of the theory is useful for your organization and then apply that in a very practical manner.
We need to adapt before adopting the frameworks. Hello and welcome everyone. I'm very excited to kick off the EA Explained video series. It is a practical and down-to-earth journey through enterprise architecture. So whether you are just getting in the space or you have been practicing enterprise architecture for years and want to sharpen your edge, this series is particularly for you. Our goal here is simple. We want to make enterprise architecture easy to understand, accessible, and actually useful. Something you can apply in your real-world context, not just study in theory. Each episode will break things down step by step with stories, examples, and clear takeaways. And the best part, you are not going on this journey alone. I'm joined by someone whose work inspired the entire series, Jager, the author of Getting Started with Enterprise Architecture. Eric brings years of experience, a practical mindset, and a passion for helping people make sense of enterprise architecture without all the jargon behind it. Eric will be with us throughout the series, walking us through each concept, sharing stories from the field, and helping us connect the dots between strategy, technology, and transformation. Eric, thank you so much for being here. If you would like to introduce yourself, what makes you interested about this series, and what can people expect from this series?
Yes, well, thanks, Omar. Well, my name is Jager. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm the author of the book called Getting Started with Enterprise Architecture. And I'm a certified master architect, hold several other certifications related to the profession of enterprise architecture. Also lecture on architecture at the Eindhoven University of Technology. Speak at some conferences and seminars. But most of all, and I think that's the main reason for me liking the whole idea of this webinar series, is to practice enterprise architecture in a practical and pragmatic manner. There's a lot of theory going around with regard to enterprise architecture, but getting down to it, down to earth, and actually explaining how to use the theory to apply enterprise architecture, that is really my thing, and that is what I really hope and like to share in these sessions that we're doing. Now, having worked for various organizations over the years, I've seen up close how enterprise architecture and sometimes the lack of enterprise architecture is applied in practice, and the gap between theory and practice fairly quickly. So I began investigating the reason behind this discrepancy, and I concluded that many organizations lacked, and some organizations still lack, a clear understanding of how to begin working with architecture. So most organizations actually try to apply the theory that is described in frameworks such as the TOGAF standard comprehensively and on a large scale as possible. And I believe that is where many organizations might go wrong, because seeing this as the main reason why architecture initiatives fail, I wrote the book Getting Started with Enterprise Architecture, in which I try to present an approach that organizations can use to start working with enterprise architecture or architecture in general. So the book helps organizations to focus on building a solid foundation at first. And when you approached me, Omar, and you said you wanted to talk about this practical or pragmatic approach of getting enterprise architecture out there and to people, that really interested me, because that's what I've been trying to do for many of years, trying to get that message of how to use and apply enterprise architecture in a practical and pragmatic way to the people out there, to the architects, if they're novice or even experienced architects. So yeah, I was really intrigued by the idea, and that's why I happily decided to join you in these sessions.
Eric, thank you so much for being here. I know a lot of people will benefit from your clarity and simple approach. But before we dive into the details, I would like to walk you through how this series is set up. You will get a quick tour of each module, understand the structure, and see how everything connects together. From the basics to real-world application, module by module story, we begin with module 0, the one you are in now, which sets the stage. You already met Eric and understood the learning structure and hear why enterprise architecture matters more than ever. In module 1, we go back to the beginning. You will explore how enterprise architecture started, how it evolved from a technology support function to a business critical role, and meet the major frameworks. You will understand the big picture milestones, if we can say that. These milestones shaped the field, and this will help you define what EA actually is. You will get to know what EA really means, understand Eric's simplified version, and see why it's important to start with a clear definition, especially if you are new to the field or trying to introduce EA in your organization. In Module 2, we explore the architecture domains: business, information or data, application, and technology, and how they work all together. We will also compare different domain models and help you understand when to use a 4-domain or 5-domain structure based on your needs. While in Module 3 is all about people and the roles behind the enterprise architecture. What does an enterprise architect actually do? How is that different from a solution or domain architect? And how do these roles vary depending on the organization structure? You will get a clear view of the team behind the architecture. In Module 4, we are going to focus more on how to visualize architecture, how to model it, document it, and communicate it using catalogs, matrices, diagrams, and repositories, and so on and so forth. You will also see how language and visuals play a big role in making EA work across business and IT. In Module 5, we look at where enterprise architecture fits in your organization. Is it more a strategic role or more into operational and day-to-day activities? Should it sit with the CIO or under the strategy? We will talk through real scenarios and how EA teams can earn their place and build trust internally. In Module 6, we will get more practical. You will learn Eric's implementation wheel, how to document and define architecture, and how to use roadmaps and dashboards to steer the work. This module brings together everything we have talked about into action steps. In Module 7, we will bring it all to life with a real-world case. You will hear how an organization applied these concepts step by step from Eric, what they have learned, and how things changed a few years later. It's a behind-the-scenes look at EA in action, if we can say that. And last but not least, in Module 8, we close the journey by helping you plan your next steps. We will go through or beyond the concepts and beyond the information that we will discuss in the series. Whether you are just starting or already deep into EA, we will share some resources, tools, and advice on how to keep growing, stay connected, and take your skills to the next level. So, Eric, before we jump into the details, what's your insights about the video series and the structure overall?
Yeah, I think the modules are a really good entry point for listeners and learners, and maybe even starting or even the experienced architects to get a hang of how to create this fundamental architecture, because we're actually delivering pieces of this fundamental approach to practicing architecture, in which we focus the basics instead of the entire and broad and full spectrum, because it's I believe that it's better to do a few things right than many things halfway. So yeah, I think by using these separate sessions, these separate modules, people get a lot of information, but not too much as an overload all at once. And I think what's also important, that we will present this content in an easy to understand way without lots of jargon or academic language. So it makes it easy to understand and interpret.
So let's get started, Eric, about why enterprise architecture matters today. In other words, we need to explore how EA helps organizations make better decisions, adapt faster, and stay aligned. Also, we need to touch base on some common myth about EA and how and why it is time to rethink them.
Yes. Well, I think, as we all know, or a lot of us know, that structure and clarity and coherence are essential to any type of organization. But it's actually those qualities that are lacking in the real life or in the practice. Because we see that if we look at the internal departments of various organizations, they operate often independently of each other. And this leads to a disjointed whole. And the consequences of that are often very diverse, because they can range from processes that do not fit together to organizational structure that does not have any matching staffing requirements, to an application landscape with overlapping and or even duplicate or triple functionality. And not to mention the supporting technology, which is often too firmly embedded, making systems very difficult to replace, resulting in a lot of legacy technology. And I think that enterprise architecture, when applied correctly, contributes to providing this structure, this coherence and insight in these organizational structures, in the business processes and the systems that are required to support them. So in that sense, enterprise architecture is a crucial factor in determining the impact of an organizational strategy and then translating it into its implementation. So ultimately, enterprise architecture contributes to achieving this organization's objectives and therefore making it an indispensable function or profession in any organization, large or small.
Yeah, it is a very good point, Eric, because most of practitioners and even the C-suite consider EA when they are working on bigger initiatives or more large corporates. So, targeting this myth or this point, do you think that EA really is for large corporates only?
Absolutely not. And I think there are a lot of myths that surround the profession of enterprise architecture, or even the use of architecture frameworks for that matter. The list is almost endless. And I think that a lot of it comes from actually not quite understanding how to use the professional, the enterprise architecture function to create this value for an organization. So it's an absolute myth that EA is only for large organizations. Like I just said, if you use enterprise architecture for specific projects or scenarios or architectural challenges that your organization faces, you can use specific parts of enterprise architecture or even specific parts of architecture frameworks that are useful for the current situation or challenge that you're facing, and apply those instead of trying to apply the profession on its full breadth. That's not necessary. And in doing that, you can almost immediately debunk a second myth, that it is kind of a rigid profession and that the frameworks are too prescriptive. That's also not true. It all boils down to a matter of interpretation and interpreting what of the theory is useful for your organization and then apply that in a very practical manner. So, but before we go through the list of all myths, we would have a whole other session to fill up. But yeah, I think it all boils down to using those parts or the specifics of the profession that are useful. And I think that's the only right way of looking at how to apply enterprise architecture in any organization.
100%. And I would say, in conclusion, we need to adapt before adopting the frameworks.
Yes.
Make sure that frameworks are tailored to our needs, talking the same language, tackling the same enterprise needs. So yes, I 100% agree with you. So that's wrap up our first episode from EA Explained. We discussed the whole video series structure, what to expect, and some of the myths that show around EA. And Eric, thank you so much again for setting the stage with such clarity for the whole series. And to our viewers, stick with us because in the next episodes we will explore how to define EA and go through the whole video series structure in a way that actually works for your organization. We'll see you in the next recording, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Omar. Up to the next one.
Thank you.